friends, and welcome to another WSIB Truth Matters with Joe Machado. It's Friday. I hope that you're enjoying the day. It's a beautiful day outside. We were promised a little bit of rain, but so far it's been pretty good. I'm going to start off this video a little differently than some of my other videos. I want to apologize to my subscribers for my delay in putting out this video. Actually, this video and yesterday's video, they were supposed to come out on Tuesday. And the reason for that is I woke up last Wednesday morning with a lot of back pain, which is not something that I typically suffer from. And I pretty much spent the last week trying to get over it and walking around like an old man, and of course not really doing a lot of the things that I enjoy, and recording a video. That in itself isn't a lengthy process, but the editing process and then getting it uploaded to YouTube and entering certain information. And I found I was having some difficulty with that, with the whole sitting and just concentrating. And I know that a lot of you watching this can relate to that. I learned many years ago that to never question the authenticity of a person's injury and how it's impacting them. And I know there's always been this stigma, particularly tied to people who have a back injury, that maybe they're not as disabled as they're portraying themselves to be. They look good, they can walk and all that and blah, blah, blah. But nobody really knows what's going on inside. And so I learned a long time ago to never question how genuine a person is when it comes to the pain that they're suffering. Not only with back injuries, but, other repetitive type strain injuries like carpal tunnel, for example, or tendonitis in shoulders or elbows, things of that nature. Typically, or fibromyalgia, for example, chronic pain. Typically, for the average person, they don't see that. It's not something physical like my injury. You can see it. It's there. People can relate to it, but it's really difficult for people who have an injury that there isn't a physical manifestation of that injury. And others can question that. And it's unfortunate, but it happens. I'll tell you a little story. I'm an avid golfer. I enjoy golfing. It's one of my addictions, very few. And I would say about 15 years ago, and I always made it a habit of stretching before I play around. So I'm off on the first tee and, I'm doing some stretches and whatnot to kind of get the muscles loose and to prevent injury, because that's really important. And I was doing my stretching and actually pulled something in my lower back, and I felt it. And I thought, oh, holy shit. And if you're a golfer and you're around a group of guys that you golf with, the banter will start if you appear less than in top shape. So I didn't say anything. And as the round went on, it's 18 holes, and it takes about 4.5 hours. I'm really suffering the pain, and by the and some of, particularly my buddy who was riding with me in the car, he goes, "Joey, you seem a little bit off. What's going on?" "No, I'm fine. Everything's good." And because I didn't want to get into the whole discussion, and of course, it'd be quite comical that a guy injures himself while stretching to play around a golf to prevent injury. So I kept my mouth shut. And by the time the 18th hole came around, I was up to my eyeballs in pain. And so anyway, I went to a chiropractor, and he took an x-ray, he always does, and showed me. And that, of course, I could see what he was looking at, because I've looked at thousands of them over the years, and I'm going, looks like a little bit of an issue with the L5-S1. He says, yeah, you have a minor bulge there, not a whole lot of to be concerned, but it's there. And so, we did a few manipulations over about a week, and I was back to normal, 100%. And about 10 years after that, we were vacationing in I think it was Mexico. And I woke up one morning and I hadn't done anything strenuous the night before. And whatever your thoughts are, maybe there was a little bit of that going on. But anyway, it pretty much ruined most of my stay there because I was in pain. And so I wanted to share that with you because, it's important that we all understand that something can be going on with someone and they may not reveal the extent of what it is, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't true. And one of the difficulties with dealing with the WSIB and employers and the whole return to work process is that there's this bright light that's being shined on you, and it can be very uncomfortable. So for those of you who have a back injury or any other type of injury and you suffer from pain, I want to tell you that I understand. I get it. And I know that it happens. And I know that it can be debilitating and it can affect many, many aspects of your life. So getting into today's video, I'm going to talk about earnings basis. They also refer to as the weekly rate or the compensation rate for claims between January 2, 1990 and December 31st, 1997. And as with any policy that the WSIB has when it comes to calculating a compensation rate or a weekly rate, depending on the year of your injury and what law was in effect at that time, the calculation methods will change somewhat, and that's why I wanted to get into this subject so that I can highlight some of the WSIB's failings when it comes to explaining to an injured worker what they may be entitled to and how to go about claiming those benefits. So these benefits are covered under Section 40, subsection 1 of the Workers' Compensation Act. So that's prior to the Workplace Safety and Insurance Act that took effect on January 1st, 1998. And basically what the law states is that in determining the average earnings of a worker, the board shall, the WSIB, A, calculate the daily or hourly rate of the worker's earnings with the employer for whom the worker worked at the time of the accident, as is best calculated to give the rate per week at which the worker was remunerated at the time of the accident. Or B, if the calculation under Clause A does not fairly represent the average earnings of the worker upon application, the board shall determine the worker's average earnings with the employer for whom the worker worked at the time of the accident during the 12 months or such lesser period immediately preceding the accident when the worker was employed with the employer. Okay, that's pretty straightforward, but you're probably thinking to yourself, well, I can understand what that reads. It seems to be pretty straightforward. And well, had I known about it, maybe my earnings would have been different. Maybe I could have claimed something different, or that they calculate my earnings based on 12 months as opposed to a daily or hourly rate or a weekly rate. And here, you should be thinking that. And why is it that the WSIB didn't make this clear? In over 30 years of dealing with the WSIB and as an injured worker myself, having dealt with thousands of claims, myself personally and paralegals that worked in my firm, I got a pretty good understanding of how things are done. And I can tell you that I can count on this hand the number of times that I had a client say, you know what, I don't think my earnings are accurate here because they did it based on my hourly rate. Can I do like a 12-month? Can they do that based on 12 months? That's how many times I got that question. Because they didn't know. And if you're not well versed in the Workers' Compensation Act and the sections that are applicable to calculation of earnings, or in pre-1990 claims, Bill 101, or the Workplace Safety and Insurance Act after January 1st, 1998, you don't know what the hell you're going to ask for. You wouldn't know what to ask for. And as I said yesterday in my other video, people, they get their check and it's like, holy shit, I'm happy that I'm getting paid. I really need it. And I'm not going to rock the boat with these people because, I've heard some stories. And if you rock the boat, they're going to target you, probably cut you off or find a way to cut you off. All valid thoughts. I've heard them more times than I can count. If an organization is transparent, it's going to do everything it can within its power to inform those whom it's supposed to serve of what they're entitled to and how to go about requesting those entitlements. But in my opinion, based on all of my experiences, transparency is definitely not at the top of the list when it comes to WSIB and how they function. And so, unlike the error that was discovered after 20 years and over $42 million owing to injured workers, as I talked about in my previous second last video, this is something that I find is more egregious and more nefarious that affects injured workers. Because you see, if you're aware of what you're entitled to, or maybe you're aware of it and you request entitlement and they deny it, you have a right to appeal. And that's one of the ways the WSIB can bar you from being or receiving benefits with all of those games. They deny, then it goes to appeals and blah, 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 and yada, yada. It's the same bullshit. And you end up with the tribunal and somebody looks at it and says, well, hang on, this is the law and these are the circumstances and this person should be paid. And it takes years sometimes for that to happen. But a worse scenario is when you are not able to claim for benefits that you're not aware of. And if you're not aware of them and how to go about claiming, by default, you were never entitled to them in the first place, and the WSIB gets to save more money to bring down their unfunded liability or whatever the fat cats upstairs are planning next. So it pisses me off. You know that. Like, this kind of shit really pisses me off. Like, come on. This is why they hate me, because I tell it like it is, and I don't really give a fuck what they think or how big a stick that they can wield. So you can request a 12-month or less calculation. Why? Well, because in your earnings, although the WSIB goes based on what they get on the Form 7, which is the employer accident report, and in most cases it says the hourly rate and how many hours per week, and generally I don't really see that much more. And I've reviewed thousands, literally thousands of files over 30 years. So in addition to that, though, they can consider periods of overtime. And I'm sure a lot of you worked overtime. Shift premiums, piecework, bonuses, commissions, tips, room and board. I mean, I can go on. But none of these things are on the Form 7. It's not there. So why? Well, I think you know why. Well, if they do a 12-month calculation, if you didn't work overtime in the week of your injury or the day of your injury, but you worked overtime 3 weeks prior to that, or 2 months prior to that, or 6 months prior to that, that wouldn't give a reasonable and a proper and accurate reflection of your earnings, because that wouldn't be included in that hourly rate. Or if you earn shift premiums and you were 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and your shift premiums only came in on the week that you happened or you didn't have your injury, or bonuses. You see what I'm getting at? All of those other potential factors that could be considered, those earnings, they are earnings. You earn them during the course of 12 months or a lesser time. And if it's a lesser time that you were with the employer, then take that lesser time and prorate it to provide with a proper and accurate reflection of what the earnings were. It's simple. It really is simple math. And the calculation method isn't complicated at all whatsoever. So for injuries or claims from January 2nd, 1990 to December 31st, 1997, the Workers' Compensation Act states that the weekly rate is based on 90% of the net average earnings. Simple. So if you had $800 take-home pay after your deductions for CBP, taxes, EI, and all those things that the employer has to deduct, and you took home, clear, $800, and you had an injury, the WSIB, according to the law, the Workers' Compensation Act, would calculate your earnings based on 90% of that, which is 90% of $800 is $720. So you would take home $720. That would be your compensation rate. But if it didn't include all of those other earnings that I just talked about, that take-home pay was probably $900 or $1,000, who knows? So if that didn't happen, were you underpaid? Fuck yeah! Did you know about it? Probably not. And here's the kicker, right? Here's the kicker. It's coming. This is the only tiny little section in a policy, 180601, I believe. A policy, not the act. In both Workplace Safety and Insurance Act and the Workers' Compensation Act prior to 1990. And I would say I'm intimately familiar with those acts. This is the only section that appears to have a disclaimer. Okay? You wouldn't know about it unless you were actually knee-deep into it and dealt with it regularly and researched and got all of your facts together. You wouldn't hear about it. But it would be a surprise for you as an injured worker if you requested a recalculation and you weren't aware of that. So this little disclaimer that they have, the only one I've ever seen in any type of benefit ever issued by the WSIB, is that if you request a recalculation of your earnings basis and it results in a reduced amount, that will be your new rate going forward, the reduced amount. Okay? So this little disclaimer says, well, yeah, you're entitled to have a 12-month recalculation. But if it goes down, you're shit out of luck. We're going to reduce it. Going forward, you're screwed. Really? Why? Isn't it their duty to ensure that you're being paid properly? Because every other section of the fucking law states that and provides very specific guidance as to how to do that. Why penalize you for asking for something or questioning something? Yeah, it may turn out to be wrong, but how many times do you submit a medical report from your specialist or your surgeon saying that you shouldn't go to work, and they're telling you that you should, and they completely ignore that? Isn't that negligence? So, it's sick. It comes from a place that is not above board, that only serves to meet the needs of their own long-term plans, wherever the hell they may be, which I think is to keep putting money in the fat cat's pockets and screw over the injured worker. You shouldn't be penalized for that, but that's what that tiny little section states. So, what types of benefits are affected by the compensation rate, or that weekly rate, or earnings basis? And I use these three, they're all one and the same, but the WSIB uses different language all the time. So I want to make sure you understand that. So it applies to total temporary disability. So that's generally, after you had an injury and you're off for a week or 2 weeks or a month, whatever, the initial stages you're receiving treatment, and they pay you total temporary disability. They can reduce it to temporary partial disability at some point, which is when, they're not really, they don't think you're being an agreeable participant, let's put it that way. But more importantly, it affects your future economic loss benefit. And some of you are receiving that benefit right now, and it has a big impact on that. And it also affects future economic loss supplements. And these would have been paid while you were involved with medical rehabilitation or a return to work program or labor market reentry services. You would have been entitled to receive that. So this weekly rate impacts all of those benefits, and it can have significant repercussions, significant positive repercussions, if you know what you're doing and if you know how to go about it. But you don't need to do that, because I devised the process with my firm, WSIBsettlements.com. And it's a process that works. I used it many, many times with my paralegal firm to get an earnings basis recalculation done, and very successful at it. Was able to get clients money from thousands to over $100,000 that they had no idea was coming to them. And so that process, I have it for you. This is, again, why the WSIB hates me, because they don't want me talking about this, because it's going to cost them hundreds of millions, probably billions of dollars. So my system is very, very straightforward, and it's a process that doesn't penalize you if there's nothing to go after. But if there is, it can mean a lot. So how does it work? Well, first step is you become a member of WSIBsettlements.com. It's a small membership fee. Visit the site, you'll see what it's all about. We request and review an electronic copy of your file. Personally, I go through it in detail and look at what the WSIB used in its calculations. The actual calculations, not by a claims adjudicator or wannabe claims adjudicator, but people in the actual payment department in the Treasury branch. That's what I look at. Then we have a discussion to go over my findings. At that point, if there is, in my opinion, based on what I've looked at, a possibility that there will be an increase in your earnings, then I give you some very specific direction as to what I'm going to need to get that. Then once I have that, I do a preliminary calculation. So I dot the I's and cross the T's, and I go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. And then if all of my calculations reveal that you would be entitled to an increase in your benefits, in arrears and going forward, I have that discussion with you. And at that point, if you agree, then we proceed with formal submissions. So it may seem complex, it's not. just the way I've devised the system, it's very simple for me to do it because I've done it many times. And if I can help you tip the scales a little bit, put some money in your bank account, and give you a better quality of life by having your benefits increased until eligibility runs out, which under Bill 162 is 65. But there could be something there for you. And that I can help with. So, my friends, once again, thank you for watching my videos. For my subscribers, I really appreciate you watching my videos and sharing them with others. I see that's happening. The subscriber number is increasing, and I really appreciate that. If you're new to the channel and you're not a subscriber, I welcome you to become a subscriber. It's free. Nobody's going to be looking for money. And if you click the notification bell, you get notified every time I come out with a new video. I have over 30 years of experience in dealing with WSIB in all 3 major legislations. And I have many more videos to put out to talk to injured workers about their rights and entitlements. My goal, even though with my paralegal firm, we had over 10,000 clients spread out all over the province, and they're promoting my videos at WSIBsettlements.com. My goal is to be able to touch every injured worker in this province and let them know that there's help, that we can help them succeed with their claims or give them some closure. I'm committed to that. So I do appreciate you sharing my videos. As always, friends, it's been a pleasure doing another video for you. Coming up next week, I'm going to talk about how retirement pension is affected by WSIB benefits. Because if you're receiving, some supplements until you turn 65, or future economic loss or loss of earnings benefits, and you really haven't been contributing to Canada Pension Disability, how does all of that impact your retirement pension? And I know that a lot of you probably already know this, but I think it's an important video and I'm going to do it. I've had a lot of requests for it. Okay, friends, so as always, once again, have an amazing Thanksgiving weekend. And as always, take care now.